Hey guys, welcome to The Great Escape. I'm Natalie Gray, and this episode is brought to you by TransferWise. If you need to send money overseas just for being a fan of this show, you can transfer up to £2,000 for free with TransferWise by going to transferwise.com/escape. That's almost $3,000, and you can transfer any amount of any currency and send it pretty much anywhere, and up to £2,000 or your currency equivalent will be free. I did a ton of research. That's how I found these guys. I was a customer. I sent money from pounds to US dollars, and not only was the transfer fee literally negligible, but the currency conversion rate I got from TransferWise was 5 cents better per dollar than any other company, including PayPal. That's 5% more money in my pocket, and that adds up to a lot of savings. My experience with TransferWise was so positive that I knew I had to bring them on board my show. In my opinion, TransferWise is absolutely the best company you can use to send your money internationally with the absolute best rates of currency conversion. To get your exclusive free international money transfer only available to listeners of this show, go to transferwise.com/escape and keep more money in your pocket and not your bank's. That's my secret gem of knowledge shared with you, but this episode is going to be full of hidden knowledge thanks to our very special guest, and I'm going to tell you just who that is and more about everything right after this. Crichton Miller knows a lot about transportation and delivery, also known as logistics. That's how he makes his living. When giant companies like Walmart and Tesco need to get their products into their store, it takes a lot of trucks. Well, Crichton Miller understands how to organize all that stuff. And we're not talking a few dozen people driving around in a few trucks. Thanks to Crichton's exceptional understanding of how people get from point A to point B, we're talking 29,000 people. Why am I telling you this? Because Crichton Miller is also an author and a researcher, and the information he has exposed for all the world to see directly involves transportation, in particular, navigation. That's all I'm going to say, but what you are about to hear is information that could literally unravel the history books of our time. A heads up, we're recording this on a working studio lot, so you might hear a bit of noise and occasional vehicle driving by, but if you do, it will be short-lived, so don't stress, and my apologies in advance if that happens. Okay, that's it. Strap yourself in, open up that mind, and listen with fresh ears. Here's expert in transportation and navigation, researcher, and author of the book The Golden Thread of Time, Mr. Crichton Miller. Right, so are you comfortable?
Probably.
Pretty comfortable, okay.
As you get older, you get less comfortable.
Is that what happens? You can slide more if you want. Like I'll back off
fine.
from your big long legs.
Okay.
How tall are you?
6'4". Well, probably I was 6'4.5", but I've shrunk a bit, I think.
It's especially tall for a Brit, isn't it? 6'4". Like in
Yeah,
America, the people are
very
taller
unusual.
in North America.
Yeah, but you know what that is, don't you?
Why? McDonald's?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. I had a friend that was a vet 20 years ago that told me that they were putting chips in calves' ears, and it was hormones.
Ah.
So what happens is the hormones reduce the amount of fat and increase the amount of lean meat and increase the size of the animal. But when you kill the animal and ate it in a beef burger, those hormones passed on.
Wow.
Did you not know that?
No, I didn't know this.
There you go.
I'm sure. I don't think this is common knowledge. That
I know. And
there's
the
chips
vet was going, my goodness, look what they're doing to the kids.
Wow.
And what were you getting in Holland was particularly, if you go and look at the Dutch kids, they're like enormous.
They are. Those Nordic people are tall. I just thought it was some Viking ancestry.
I've got some of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're definitely tall. You're a tall lad over here, Crichton.
When I was 14, I was the same height. And so they used to call me Beanpole and things like that.
Right. Well, I sense from my brief encounter, literally standing out the back of your car in Avebury after you'd done a brilliant presentation around the stone circles with a tour that had travelled all over the world to come and see you. And then right at the tail end of it, you casually get these things out the back of your car and you had a parking lot full of people mesmerised with your knowledge and the gadgets that you showed us. So it's hard to know where to start. So where is the beginning of this sudden knowledge that I guess you would call hidden knowledge, correct?
Yeah. How did it come to me?
Yeah, well, how did your life, where was there suddenly a crossover? Were you always curious about things? Okay.
From a very young age. And funnily enough, I sat in my primary school in Roseneath in Scotland, not paying any attention to the teachers, and looking out the window, and there's a church opposite. The top of the church was a Celtic cross. So, and it's on every gravestone in Scotland and Ireland. It's a Celtic way, if you like. But we also lived by the sea, well, in the sea loch. So I started sailing at a very early age. Then I ended up as an RYA navigator as part of my hobby, and navigation became one of the things I was interested in. And I guess came about years later. And it actually had to do with global warming, which you wouldn't see a connection, I suppose. But
No.
yeah, what it was, I wasn't sure that the planet itself hadn't changed slightly on its axis. Now, that was quite naive in those days, but what I did was I thought, well, where can I find human-made monuments, if you like, and look and see if they've changed position. Well, there's a lot of work being done on the Great Pyramid at Giza, and it's like 3 arc minutes off true north. But I also have experience in surveying and architecture and that sort of thing as well. And I thought, well, how could they gear to true north? How could they even align them? And this comes to all the alignments of the monuments and things. So I started experimenting. Now, we've got a star cluster in the sky, if you like, called Polaris. And Polaris is our North Pole star. And at the time, I didn't realize anything about precession of the equinoxes. And
Is that the star that in the tails, all the ship seamen are following? The North Star
absolutely.
is Polaris.
You follow
okay.
the North Star, which
Right.
is Polaris. Now, I didn't realize about precession at the time, and nor did science at the time. They weren't really looking at precession in terms of its association with archaeology.
And is precession, is it correct? That's the shift as it orbits round and round, it's slowly moving along a different trajectory?
Well,
is that what is precession?
Precession really is if you think of the Earth as a ball, and it's tilted. It's tilted by, I think, it's really caused by the gravity of the sun and the Earth on the equator. And it tilts the Earth 23.4 degrees.
Okay.
And it's a bit like a top spinning. And as it slows down, it tends to wobble. It's like that. And it takes 25,920 years to do one wobble.
Wow.
But the tilt is the thing that causes the seasons.
Huh.
Okay? And if it wasn't for the tilt, you wouldn't have life as we know it. And that's why you have spring, summer, autumn, and winter.
Wow.
Okay. So I looked to how I could align with the pole star. And I got a piece of stick. And because what I think is, there's nothing wrong with archaeology in saying, well, they've dug up all the simple things that we used to have. But I didn't realize at the time how incredibly intelligent our ancestors were. So I took a stick and I pointed it at the pole star. And I thought, well, that wobbles. I need to steady it So I took another piece of stick and attached it to it.
Hello.
And
I know what's coming here.
yeah, sure. And then, but I still hadn't realized what was going on. So I thought, okay, well, what I need to do is I need to make a scale. And so I made a circular scale out of wood and I fixed it to the front. And I looked at it and said, why have I got a Celtic cross in my hand?
So to clarify, when you stuck the one bit of wood to the other one, you made it look like what we would think of as a crucifix shape.
Correct. Yeah. So then I spent 2 years researching and couldn't find anything about it. And the Celtic cross was like kind of a, it got all these interweaving forms on it and designs and so forth. And then we found some really old ones, searched across the world, and we found Celtic crosses going back 10,000 years. And Scandinavian Celtic crosses sitting on boats 1400 BC. And it suddenly it wasn't a Christian symbol anymore. So I researched symbols. By this time, I'd gone away from global warming. As you can imagine, I was now going, well, how did they do this? How did they build these things?
And why were they on ships?
And why were they on ships? And why are they on every continent on the earth in buildings and designs where there was supposed to be no connection between different countries and continents? And then I started to find similarities in things between Scotland and Ohio and the Maya Indians and the same designs. I realized that really what we did is we traveled not by road or by plane as we do now. It was safer to travel by sea. So people migrated around way back in the hunter-gatherer times, but you can't navigate. You can't find out where you are when you're more than 3 miles off the coast.
Because it just looks the same.
It's exactly the same as sea and sky. So now that took me back to the Bible. So in Genesis, in the Bible, it's verse 14, it says, God put the sun and the moon and the stars in the sky and put signs to keep the time, the day and the week. So signs are constellations. Okay, so constellations are about throwing a shape that means something to you into a shape in the sky and calling that star collection, if you like, by a name that was associated with animals or something that was important to you. And that allowed a verbal recognition of time and the calendar and so forth to pass down generation after generation. And that would have been why it's done. So I go back to the pyramids at Giza, you suddenly find that the pyramid complex incorporate everything into stone about natural time. Sadly, people tend to measure it in cubits and feet and inches and megalithic yards and stuff, and that bears no relation to what the ancestors were actually doing. What they were working with is in degrees and arc minutes. And
now, is that like if you look at the circle and it's 360 degrees,
Yeah.
is that what a degree
Absolutely.
actually is? Okay.
Yeah, but a degree's broken down into parts. So there's 60 arc minutes in a degree. Remember I
Okay.
said the pyramid was 3 arc minutes
Yeah,
off?
yeah.
Okay, and then arc minutes are broken down into arc seconds.
Wow.
Okay, so back to navigation, an arc minute is exactly equal to 1 nautical mile on the Earth's, what we call a great circle. Well, you would easily think of a great circle as being the equator, the fattest part of the
Yeah.
Earth. But great circles work in any angle. So that brings us to meridians. So prime meridian is a great circle. And that's a line, if you imagine, from the North Pole to the South Pole and right back again. But meridians can be anywhere. So where you are is a meridian. It's your personal meridian. So why is that relevant? Well, it's relevant because you can find your position on the Earth without a watch when you know this. And the only way that you can do it is with the moon. Because the moon travels more slowly across the sky. It's retrograde. And it travels approximately 12 degrees more slowly every 24 hours than the sun and the stars.
Is that what retrograde means? Just
Yes,
going
backwards.
slower. Oh, backwards.
Yeah,
But it's really
retro.
not going backwards. It's just our perception,
No, it's just
right?
slower.
Right.
Yeah. And,
The moon's not going backwards
but,
before
that's
you guys
right.
get out of
Okay.
control.
Yeah, sure. So it just means that the moon travels more slowly in its orbit than as the Earth spins, the stars and the sun go past at a fixed rate. But the moon doesn't because it's slower. And it's 12 degrees slower every 24 hours. Now, if you have an almanac and at midnight every night you check the position of the moon, say, against Venus, then at your position on your prime meridian, on your great circle, and you record it, if you're anywhere east or west of that and it's midnight, and you check the angles and degrees from the written down records, the difference is the difference in your place on the Earth, left or right. That's longitude.
Okay.
So you don't need a clock or a watch for that. So we go back to Harrison's chronometer, which was how we discovered longitude.
Is that how we discovered longitude?
No.
I have no idea how we
It's not.
discovered
The moon was
longitude.
used for finding longitude before the creation of Harrison's chronometer. But the only instrument that could measure the moon and its angles to such a degree would have to be a plumb line with a scale. So there we go, back to what I'd made all those years ago.
And a plumb line, for those who aren't in construction and building and
Yeah.
stuff, is basically
A
a
string
piece of
with a weight.
string with a
Yeah,
weight on it.
that's it.
So it always hangs straight down because of the force of gravity.
Well, it's very
Is that
interesting
right?
because it's the only constant in the world. There are actually two constants that never change. And one is the North Pole of the Sun, and the other is a plumb line pointing to the center of the Earth.
Wow.
Everything else changes all the time. So is because ancient Hebrew for the plumb line is anak, which is similar to ankh, and it's drawn as a plumb line. So then that's also in the Bible.
You mean the ankh is drawn as a plumb line? Is that what you mean?
No, the anak.
Oh, the
is
anak,
similar
okay.
to
Got
the
it,
Egyptian
okay.
ankh.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
which
just
is
eager to start
the
a
symbol
rumor
of
here.
life.
So the ankh is a plumb line.
Well, the ankh is a cross. And if you were to make a cross that would find the North Pole, and there's something else you need to know about, so we're going to talk about dragons.
Excellent. Oh, dragons.
Yeah, we're going to talk about dragons. So we talked about constellations, okay? And the most important constellation in the sky is the dragon, or the serpent, or in English, the worm.
I didn't even know there was a dragon in
Yeah,
the
there is.
sky.
It's called Draconis.
It sounds very evil.
Well, it's considered evil and good. Okay, because we'll talk about the Egyptian goddess of rebirth, which is called Reret. And Reret is a symbol for the dragon. She's also the goddess of rebirth and motherhood. And she's a combination creature of a hippopotamus and a crocodile and a lion.
She sounds very attractive.
Which is not too attractive in the sense that the Egyptians considered that if you didn't live your life properly on Earth, on their idea of Mat, the balance of the scales of justice, honesty, and all of that sort of thing, then you would be eaten by her
I
and
see.
reconstituted and born again until you learned.
So even the Egyptians were operating using fear then.
Yeah, if you like, they were saying you had to be good, but they applied to the pharaohs too. So
Oh, they held it to their upper echelon of people as well. It wasn't restricted
but
to the lower
the
people.
pharaohs were more a servant originally, and you're going back to shamanism now because they're really animistic shaman that had developed into, I guess, the tribes. The small tribes would look to somebody that had the sight to give them guidance on where to camp, when to leave, when to chase, what to do. So they become kind of rulers, if you like, which is an interesting word because ruler means measurer. So if you look at it in that sense, these shaman then became representatives of God on earth. After a while, they became so corrupt they became gods. This is true in China. This was true for the Maya people. If you look around even 300 years ago, then you'll find that they were living gods. So that was the idea of the rulers. They had stopped being interpreters and become gods themselves.
The measurers.
The measurers.
I kind of like
the
that
rulers.
comparison.
Yeah, I like the ruler you used at school to measure things.
I feel I've knocked you off track though, off
okay.
of your anak.
Okay.
Off the anak and,
Okay,
and
so
the plumb line.
anak, right. Now, that's really important because the dragon constellation is Draconis, holds two things in its form. One is the North Pole of the Sun, which is just under the head in the first coil of the dragon or serpent sign. And that never varies. And the other one, when they built the pyramids and built Stonehenge and so forth, was Alpha Draconis, often known as Thuban. So that was the last pole star. So between the 14th century where we are now, there was no North Pole star right back to when the pyramids were built.
What do you mean there was no star? You mean it just disappeared?
It's a pole star. It's the celestial pole. It shows the North Pole of the Earth. Yes, it disappeared. And the reason it disappeared is because of precession, the wobble of the Earth.
For the wobble again.
Because of the wobble.
The sneaky wobble.
Yeah, and it's 1 degree every 72 years. So when you look at modern astrologers, this is why they're often accused of being pseudoscientists, because although they use mathematics, they use charts based on what the Greeks did 2,000 years ago. So your star sign isn't the star sign you think it is.
Oh, really?
It's a whole 30 degrees out.
Oh.
So, people who think they're Virgos are Leos.
Oh. Wow.
If it means anything.
Well, how do I find out what I really am?
Well, you just look on a proper chart.
Will you look for me?
I've
Because
got
it sounds really complicated.
Yeah, I've got one. Well, it's not complicated. It simply is you were born on the day that the sun was in a particular sign. And it's in 12 signs throughout the year because of the Earth orbiting the sun. So if you think about yourself as being energy, which you are, everything you eat is sun energy, and you were born on the day that the sun was putting energy on the Earth, from which you built yourself. Okay, so it's a sun sign, it's a birth sign. So if you're in the wrong constellation and people are giving you interpretations of your life, man, that could drive you a little nuts.
Yeah.
Trying to be what you're not.
Right.
If you believe that.
Right.
Now, 52% of the population of the Western world believe in it. So it's a religion.
That's quite a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. But here, isn't this bad? You've got to go and pick somebody that's the right star sign for you. So you go and pick it, and 10 years down the road, you get divorced because they don't fit. So it affects people's lives.
Yeah, I'd imagine a lot of people do actually take it seriously.
Yeah,
and
they
make
do.
decisions.
52%
Wow.
of the population.
Yeah, that
They look at the star signs every day in the newspapers, and they're a whole star sign out.
Well, how come this inaccuracy has been allowed to propagate? Why didn't they just do it correctly in the first place?
Well, that's because it's a trade secret.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so measuring the position of the stars and the sun and telling the time in the calendar was enough to make Julius Caesar invade Britain and try and get the knowledge out of the Druids.
Is that why he did it?
Well, of course, if you've got a calendar and you know what you're doing, you can navigate. Look, Constantine even said it with a cross. Constantine said, with this sign I will conquer. And he did, because once you got the cross, you could measure the planet. You could find out where you were. You could navigate the oceans.
So we need to get back and clarify, because I've seen this gadget, which looks like a crucifix with a circle in the middle, which is known as the Celtic cross.
Yeah.
And also, and this is the key element, which is so ingenious, I have to say, the simplicity of it. I mean, we could all be building these things at home in our apartments and our garages and navigating the world with this. You just literally hang the piece of string with the weight on the bottom, the plumb line. Does it go from the very top of the cross? And that's it. That's your navigate. And it's so clever. And what is marked along the crossways of the cross part of it is a ruler with little notches of measurement, and that's how you measure the angles and the degrees.
That's right.
And that gadget is enough to get you around the planet.
Yeah, it's accurate within 3 miles.
Wow.
So that's within vision. So the average human being standing looking at the horizon, which means place of time, from Horus, hours, horizon, place of time, is 3 miles. So that allows you to be within visibility of what your measurement is.
So if you're on the ocean, you can see land at least. I mean, to me, that's so, a gadget like that, imagine looking back in history, I would think nothing other than the discovery of fire would have been so significant and empowering to man as the ability to navigate this planet.
Hugely important.
It's enormous.
Well, it created the mathematics. So the mathematics we use in modern science comes from this. What our ancestors did is measure natural mathematics. So how many times does the Earth spin a day? And how long is a year? And how long is a season? And how long is a month? So they even discovered precession of the equinoxes of 25,920 years.
I mean, that's baffling. I don't even know how do you pass that on? Like, hey, son, all your life you're just going to watch this shadow and then make sure you tell your son and his son for the next how many thousands of years?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a trade, and you've got to get that clarity. The thing is, it was a trade. So if you ran a church or you ran a pyramid or a temple means place of keeping time from tiempo.
Wow.
Okay, if you measured that, it took a team of you. So people would look after different planets, the moon, the sun, Venus, and they would measure it. And they would collate it all together. So what you had was a large clock. And where we replaced the cogs in a modern clock, it was done by human beings.
So are you saying then that things like churches and pyramids were basically just organizations to chart time?
Yes. And the word church tells you that because it comes from kirk. And kirk means ruler, which means measurer. But it also comes from kirkos, meaning circle. So where people say, well, church means a place where you gather, they're entirely misled. It is a place for measuring time. And that's why they invented the first 24-hour clock in the 14th century, put it in horloge, and there's another one at Wells Cathedral. And what that does is it tracks the position of the sun around the Earth. So if you take a clock or a watch and look down on it, imagine you're looking down from the North Pole on the planet. And the planet appears still, which is the Copernicus issue. The sun moves around it. So the big hand on your watch follows the position of the sun. Well, the first clocks were 24-hour clocks, so it was absolutely accurate. And then we converted it to a 12-hour clock. So it goes round twice in 24 hours. And at that time, we lost the ability to see that the mathematics we were using to tell the time was where the sun was over a 24-hour period.
I mean, how could it even get lost? You've had people who've somehow done this for 26,000 years virtually, and suddenly this information is lost? How can that happen?
It's about invention. So mental arithmetic was something that my generation was taught at school. Some of us could do it and some couldn't. And those of us that couldn't were saved by the calculator. So along came the first calculator.
Casio, yes.
Yeah. And the first calculator came along and people didn't need to do mental arithmetic anymore. So mental arithmetic is slipped out of most people's abilities. And that's the same thing. When we invent something that replaces something that went before, it becomes redundant. And when it's redundant, it's no longer necessary. So what I'm telling you would have got me burnt at the stake, excommunicated, or something worse during the time that was necessary for people to make a living and to control. But it's redundant now. And so people don't mind if you find out about it.
I would think I would think people who are religious and believe in churches and temples for other reasons would have a very big issue with it.
Well, Christians that I've spoken to say it enhances the cross. They find it fantastic because it's not just an instrument of death now. It's not an instrument of torture and suffering. It's a scientific instrument and enhances their religious views.
I mean, whether or not it is true, I'm not going to comment on, but obviously there's the belief of, a person called Jesus Christ who was crucified on the cross. Do you believe that happened?
If you look at the story, of Jesus Christ and wonder why he got aggressive and why he made a whip and why he went in and turned over the money lenders' tables in the temple, it becomes more, there's more of an understanding, because Jesus was descended from David, and David wrote a psalm. He wrote many psalms, but the psalm that's of interest to us is Psalm 23.4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, because your rod and your staff will comfort me. Well, a rod means a measuring instrument. A rod comes from reed, the Egyptian segmented grass. So it's another way of calling it a ruler. So a rod and a staff is the cross. So Jesus would have known that. So if he found that he went into the temple and it was corrupted with commercialism, then he would have been pretty furious. So the question is, did they kill him for that? Did they get Romans to kill him for that?
And I mean, what kind of corruption of commercialism, if you've got then, say, a church that their whole thing is monitoring time and the intelligence of the charting of time, and they pass it on to their team of people, how does that get commercialized?
Because they were putting money in the church. There were money changers in the church. So they were doing lending and...
Like a bank?
Yeah.
So the church was operating like a bank?
Sure. And to be controversial, we've just had the head of the Bank of England in Lincoln Cathedral.
What do you mean in Lincoln
Well, he was
Cathedral?
in there talking on television, standing there in Lincoln Cathedral, talking about money.
Why did they have him in a cathedral?
I don't know.
Not a bank.
Exactly.
That is a little strange.
Yeah, but the whole of old society was pinned together by the ruler, the kings, and the church. In fact, it says it in the Bible. There's a prophecy in the Bible that the lion shall lay down with the lamb. Well, that's exactly what happened. The lamb represents the church and the lion the king. And the combination of those two things allowed the church to raise tithes across the whole of Europe, 10%, and the king, the ruler, to charge taxes.
And would it be these taxes?
Biggest franchise you ever saw.
Would it be the taxes, that paid for the operations of the timekeeping temples?
That'd be tithes.
Tithes that would come from normal people.
Yes. So if you want to go to heaven in those days, you had to go dig your fields and do the harvesting and milk the cows, and then you would go to church on a Sunday when you were told to go, and the bell would ring and you'd turn up. And then they would have a collection and you'd put money in the thing, or you'd be tithes, and that would sustain the church.
But was it already tied in with religion? Would you have a man giving a sermon that was some sort of a speaking thing that also happened then in the timekeeping building?
Absolutely. So if you're trying to ask the connection of creation is time. So time was God. Everything that was in the moment, no past, no future, everything that is here and now is creation and destruction. So that would be every intelligence you can think of across the planet conscious in this moment would be the God, our God, the great consciousness of which we're a small part. So therefore it would be fitting in a place of measuring the face of God to teach people about cause and effect within a church, a building.
Now, would they have had this reverence for time? I mean, did they look at time as this profound, all-being intelligence that was governing their lives, as opposed to something a bit more functional of, right, well, it's this time of year, so plant your seeds?
Yeah, I think the second part is how most people function.
More practical.
And they still do today. There's no difference. We're all controlled by time.
So it was really practical and functional.
Practical and functional.
Okay.
And you can't have one without the other. So the left brain and the right brain of humanity, the spiritual and the practical, those are all balanced. If a person has both, they're balanced. If they have one and not the other, they're unbalanced because they're only using part of themselves.
I guess I am curious so you've got these organizations then that are very functional, much as the way we might have the Department of Water and Power, Or, the Department of Motor Vehicles. It serves to give us information that allows us to get on with our lives and do things, which is what the knowledge of time would also do. It'd be very valuable to any travelers, any people growing things.
It's a service.
Exactly. It's a service. So I'm curious, where did it all go wrong? And suddenly it's not just a service anymore. It's, do you believe in this? And if you don't, we'll kill you.
Well, let's talk about belief. Well, it's another word. See, the thing is that everything that you want to find out, you can find in a good college dictionary. So if you look at the meaning of the words, we're brought up as little children and well, that's a chair. So the child recognizes a chair, calls it a chair. Doesn't know the meaning behind chair. And so belief is one of those words. Belief means by love. It's Old English. So it means I think this because I love this. It doesn't mean I know it. So there's a huge difference between belief and knowledge.
There's an implied faith with the word belief.
Now, faith's another tricky word because faith means to follow a man.
Oh.
Yeah, that's in the dictionary.
To follow a man?
Sure. And that's really important.
And trust that he knows where he's going?
Correct.
Okay.
The leader. Follow the leader. Okay, so who's the leader that people follow?
Well, it depends what religion you're in.
Yeah. And that's about, are you sovereign? Are you a sovereign soul? Do you have your own reasons for walking the balance between right and wrong? Or do you do it because you've been told to?
So belief.
So how's it gone wrong?
Well, yeah. How did it go wrong? How do you? Imagine today. Let's say what organization we've got. The Department of Motor Vehicles in America. I'm not sure what they call it here, with it where they do the car stuff.
Okay.
And suddenly they're saying,
Voser, I think.
But do you really believe in our methods of how we're doing what? And they start to tell you stuff, and they say, by the way, here's your driving license, but in addition, don't have sex with your neighbor's wife, or else we won't be giving you a driver's license.
It's definitely specialized.
How does that line get crossed that you're doing a service of telling people about time and then suddenly you're telling them how to live their life? By the way, don't be stealing off people.
That's because time is a peculiar thing. And time is about cause and effect. So what you do will have an effect. The more powerful the thing you do, the greater the effect, and the longer it'll last, like dropping a stone in a pool of water. So they knew that. And that's what the Ten Commandments are about, because that is about cause and effect. If you do this, then you'll be breaking the law. If you break the law, it'll cause damage. It'll damage other people. So that was the balance that the church and the temples, priests, that go right back to shaman, looked at. They were able to see the future in the sense that if this happened, then that will happen. Nowadays, we've lost that. Even our politicians, the leaders, the last 5 years, doesn't matter, leave an envelope on the desk saying, tough luck, mate, we messed up. You sort it out. Royalty, I guess, rulers, at least they were a lifetime for right and wrong. And they took responsibility for their actions historically. We killed them. We murdered them across Europe. I think the last one was probably the Tsar in Russia.
But we've got a queen still.
We have a queen.
So we haven't murdered
she doesn't
ours.
Rule. She stands there and says this is the epitome of how humanity should live, with loyalty, trust and care. That's what she does. But she has no constitutional power. That's left to our politicians. And the worst about it is that they change things. So they think that their only immortality is in the changes they make. Whereas our ancestors that built the pyramids and the Chinese empires, they fought to not change things because the world changes all the time. In fact, time is just a measure of change. So they battled to try and get stability in a chaotic world, whereas our leaders now want to change things. And the change causes complete chaos and deterioration, as you can see. People don't like it. You shouldn't shoot the messenger. That's the truth. We have no stability.
So what sort of time period are we talking about that, there's the transition happening from just these very decent people who are just doing their task of watching shadows and keeping their almanac, their big book of time and the North Star and the sun and all this stuff. Where does it get infected with ulterior motives?
Well, it depends whether you make money out of it. I mean, if you look at the Christian religion, it's full of schisms. That's separations. So England was greatly changed by the schism that came along with Protestantism to protest. So they protested against what they thought was the corruption in the Roman Catholic Church.
And wouldn't that actually have been a good thing?
Well, it's a division. And the word diabolical means to divide in two, from dia.
But if there was all sorts of corruption actually happening in the Catholic Church, wouldn't it have been a good thing then that you've got protesters?
In my opinion, you should repair your family's issues within, not leave the family. So what you do is you cause a division, and then you cause conflict. And you've seen conflict since Henry VIII in England and Ireland and the Catholics and the Protestants, all the wars of Scotland, the 45th Rebellion, all of that, right across the world, is about division.
And do you feel this division was by design, or did it just happen very organically?
No, it just happens if you design, if you have division, your family, your society, your country will fall apart. People will take sides.
And so the Celtic cross then, I mean, it's on gravestones everywhere. It is gravestone shape.
Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming those gravestones, there would be some that are incredibly old.
Sure.
So why would somebody want to have a time-telling navigational apparatus as their gravestone?
To go to heaven.
Oh, to navigate to heaven.
Yes.
Oh.
To go back to Rebirth.
Wow.
Okay.
By the way, don't be shy to drink your coffee.
Okay.
Don't let it, if you want to have your sip of coffee.
Let's go back
you
to
can
the
have
Guardian.
some coffee, because I'm going to have some of mine. Don't you worry.
Let's go back to the Guardian of the Gates of Heaven.
And if you're a slurpy kind of guy, I can cut it out. Oh, I know the need for a cup of coffee.
Let's go back to the Guardian of Heaven in Egypt's time. It was Reret. Reret, as I think we discussed, didn't we, as a combination hippopotamus, lion and crocodile, the three most dangerous animals to the Egyptians. Also the goddess of rebirth and of mothers.
I never pictured a hippopotamus as dangerous.
Hippopotamus, most dangerous animal in Africa.
Really?
It's more dangerous than a lion.
Doesn't he just hang out at a bit of water?
No, he'll rush out of the water and he'll eat you alive. Very dangerous, the hippopotamus. But also the goddess of motherhood. So in the right hand of Reret in the images is what they call the mooring post. And the mooring post is what the Earth's attached to. That's its mooring, and that's the North Pole star. So nowadays we talk in Christianity about St. Peter guarding the gates to heaven. You're not going to get in if you've been a really bad person in this life. That was the idea behind that. The spiritual idea behind it. I hate to use the word religion because it means bound again.
Is that what the word means?
Yeah, it means to be bound. It comes from religare, which is Latin. And that means ligare is where the word ligature comes from, meaning to be tied. But religare means to be tied again. And that means that our ancient Christian ancestors believed in reincarnation.
So you've already been tied.
You've been tied. So you're born, and the moment you're born, you go and get, the moment you can hear the priest's talking to you, and you're tied again. So you become tied to an idea, an ideal. That's religion. So I don't like to use the word religion when I talk about spiritual matters. So if we talk about spiritual matters, then the idea is that you are energy that has arrived in this place, and you've come from the sun. And if you have the right kind of life, you should then become a star. This was the idea, the spiritual idea of the Egyptian people. So their pharaoh would become a star. If the pharaoh hadn't been good and on the scales of justice, and his heart was on one side in a canopic jar, and the white feather of truth was on the other side of the scale. And if the heart was heavier than the feather, in other words, if you had done such things in
You'd
your
fibbed,
life, you
you
had
told a lie or
heavy
something.
heart, or if you'd done damage, if you damaged other human beings through your own greed and avarice or power seeking or whatever, then your heart would be heavy at the end of your life, because at the end of your life you'd realize it was a nonsense.
But who would depict this? Because you wouldn't tell somebody, make sure you paint me with that bell jar way down low. I've got to be honest here. But
Yeah, the whole idea is that you're your own judge. If your heart's heavy, you know what you are.
And so they would be open about it.
Sure. So Rara wouldn't let you into heaven. You'd be reborn, and you'd continue to be reborn. So the energy that is you, the consciousness that lives within your body, couldn't leave the planet. Wouldn't be light enough. So I laugh when I hear about UFOs and things like that. I think really intelligent people or intelligent life forces. They're more intelligent than human beings would need spaceships. They wouldn't even need a body. They could come and go as they please, because it'd be pure energy. And that's advanced in the Egyptian term. To be confined in a body isn't freedom.
Do you think, I'm just going to shut the window because of this, it's pretty noisy around here, even for a Sunday.
She's got me going, hasn't she? You got me going, girl.
Good.
Can you make comedy out of this?
Oh, this doesn't have to be funny. Don't you worry about that. That's better.
So that's the whole idea of judgment.
Now, do you believe in UFOs?
Belief's a choice word, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Do
love.
I buy love?
Yeah. Do you
Would I
buy
like
love?
to see one?
Right.
Yeah. When I was a younger, I did. But then, no, I don't, because I'm ex-military, and I know that most of the things that we see in the sky are military secret tests. I'm air traffic control, for goodness sake.
Is that what your line of work
was?
was?
That's what I did in the Royal Air Force. So if you look at UFOs, we have lots of UFOs. But UFOs means unidentified flying object. The radar systems that we use could pick up birds flying, cars on the road, and everything in the sky up to 60,000 feet. So we saw UFOs, and we reported them. And that would be something climbing at a fantastic rate and going across the radar screen. And what people may or may not realize is that all aircraft flash an identification beacon. That's how we know if there's an invasion coming in from Russia, because it would be an unidentified flying object. And then we'd scramble jets to see what it was. But some of these objects were too fast, faster than any jet. Well, of course, they were missiles being fired out testing sites. So UFOs, there isn't one that would get through, unless it was pure energy, just a spirit.
But what about all the, for example, there are even governments now, there's the Disclosure Project, and, France has been very big on trying to push other countries forward. They have a book with all the sightings of things that look like what we perceive in the Hollywood movies as UFOs, discs, shapes, and flying saucer-looking things. And even a lot of newspaper stuff of strange things, white lights happening over the White House that was actually documented, and jets and stuff would interface. The Battle of Los Angeles, which I think was 1942, they had the military out shooting at this strange, what looked like a saucer over Los Angeles. What about those things? And I'm not saying I believe or don't believe. I'm curious of your take on it.
My take on it is that the more you encourage people to believe in alien UFOs, unidentified spaceships, easier it is to test your weapons of death.
Yeah, I can see that logic. It's
the same with the cross.
Yeah, let's get back to the cross.
Yeah, because the cross is an instrument. So how do you protect something that's important to you for making money or winning or power and can't hide it? What you do is you hide it in full view. And then you tell a story around it. So you tell a story that people believe, like the UFO people. They believe what they're told. But you look at the stealth bomber, 20 years that took. Looks like a flying saucer. How are they going to fly it without people seeing it?
Stealth bomber doesn't look like a flying saucer. I beg
Depends
to
what
differ. It
point
looks
of
like a
view.
paper aeroplane.
You have a look
in
at it
black.
from the front end.
Yeah, from the front I can see it looking a
Okay.
bit domey shaped.
And you get latest things in helicopters flying over area or parts near Area 51. Well, helicopters have lights.
Is that your tummy? Do you want a snack? We have snacks here. Do you want a snack?
They
Yeah,
won't
yeah.
make any difference.
Bottom drawer, Jason, where you're sat, there's bars.
The truth is hard, you know. People go through their lives requiring comfort. So it's easy to believe something simple and you can get on with your life until it's too late.
Take your pick of snack bars.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are nice, those pumpkin ones.
Did you get that?
Well, the human race does seem to crave having something that they can, quote, believe in.
Well, if you don't believe
it provides comfort.
Sure. If you don't believe in Jesus, a UFO would do. Aliens are coming to save us. The planet Nibiru. People are going to come off it and save us. Save yourself.
I mean, I believe in a consciousness. I definitely believe there's a consciousness that permeates everything and connects everything, a vibrational frequency that we all emanate and operate within.
That's right. That's true.
I don't ascribe anything that is divisive, you know, so I won't put a person's name and attach it to what I believe in.
Quite right. Then you're sovereign. Don't have attachments.
It's tragic when you look at the devastation born out of ascribing a name to something that's invisible and having giant communities of people believe in it. It's tragic. But not to say that what the beliefs are of the, you know, the power. I'm not saying there's not a power. But I don't know if he or she or it has a name. I think it's beyond a name, you know?
That's the point. He, she, it. You only have to look at life. We human beings, we cannot make a leaf. And that gathers sun energy, turns it into sugar. The animals eat it. And we drink milk and might eat the animals, but, you know, we eat vegetables. Just pure sun energy. The consciousness that's on the earth creates things we can't create. We can't even literally stop one of our hairs falling out on our head. And when we look at that and remove the images and the ideas of UFOs and crosses and things that have been pumped into us since we were religiously forced, either by teachers or scientists, because science is just a religion. Atheism is a religion in the sense of the word religion, to be bound and tied. We get rid of all that nonsense and then just look. Then you can see the work. Then you can see the intelligence. Mankind is stupid. Needs to wake up. If it doesn't wake up, it'll be replaced.
I mean, civilizations. What's the longest civilization in your research that ever lasted? I mean,
I think China and Egypt were the two.
And how many thousands of years?
4,000 for Egypt, I think, and 5,000 for China through the dynasties.
And our civilization, as we would recognize it, how long have we been going?
I think America's 350 years.
And what about Europe and the UK?
It's a difficult one to say. I guess if you look at Europe from the date of Constantine, okay, that was 380 AD, I think. So I guess you could say 1.75 millennia. Not very long. Held together by Christianity or Christendom.
Which is being heavily impacted right now by the Islamic religion that is very much permeating Europe right now.
Yeah, I think we have to look at one of the most important mathematical inventions that Islam was made in Timbuktu, and it's algebra. Modern mathematics wouldn't function without it. And I think our two great universities, at least one of them was founded by Islam, from the ideas that came from North Spain through the Christian setup. So, Islam's another religion. As Billy Connolly said, how can you make love to 24 virgins when you're flying mints? That's what people do to themselves with their ideas. No kindness or gentleness in them. There's no giving. They need to learn to give, to be kind, get rid of all these ideas and just function. Their lives are very short. What a shame to come to the end of your life and realize it was all rubbish.
I mean, apparently from research I've done, the knowledge was being passed down until there was a big intervention and a lot of the knowledge was burned, and the Bible that actually started out as a well-intended book with information, that even I come across some documents that said a lot of the knowledge was to do with how we would access our own higher intelligence and higher consciousness and be much more aware of things like avoiding ideas and ideologies, that we would have much more of a connection to other people and to nature and to the world around us and recognize our connection within the world as opposed to feeling separate from the world and separate from other people. And that somehow practices, who knows whether it was to do with meditation or even plant concoctions that you would drink, that shaman would drink, that somehow all of this was burned and lost. I mean, is that correct?
It's about power. And you have to ask a question. If you're going to change society, what are you going to replace it with? So the thinkers have tried everything. So you've had your religions, then you've had communism, and that's failed, and, on it goes. Continuous failures trying to replace methods of keeping society together. And I think if you look at it as belief and faith, you could say that that will keep a society together, but it better not be built on straw. How do you get everybody pulling together in something that lasts?
How do you do it?
Sure. That's the point.
I mean, for starters, the majority of all the things people believe in the world are based on something invisible that there isn't actually hard evidence of.
Well, there's nothing that's invisible. What's invisible?
Well, I mean,
what cannot be seen?
For example,
with the eye?
but I mean, for example, the story of Jesus Christ. That's where's the proof? So you've got.
Why do you need proof?
Well, I mean, well, I suppose, yeah, I would like to see proof. That would be good. Because other than that, it's faith. It's believing what this guy tells me. Well, what if he's a crook?
Sure.
And what if he's telling me something?
Yeah, and you've got to shell the money out of your pocket to support the crook.
Right.
Good
and
point.
Again, I'm not saying that I don't believe or do believe here, because I don't want to go and upset people.
Terrible word, belief, isn't it?
Yeah, but how
do you know?
How has it even been born, these religions all over, when, I mean, do you think there ever was a vision of a man up in the heavens? I mean, a God? Where does this idea of God come from?
God's an intelligence. So what you have to do is be one thing or the other, logically, using logic, reason, and common sense. We talked about it earlier. We can't make a single leaf. So we would prefer to say that was through natural selection, but that doesn't answer the question, because it doesn't work. Natural selection in that sense doesn't improve things. Humanity is a prime example of that. We're not improved than we were 3,000-4,000 years ago.
What happened with those civilizations? I mean...
Well, they were attacked, taken over. So what happened was the things that the greed, the power seeking, if somebody had a commodity that you needed, then You took it.
I mean, who attacked Egypt?
Exactly.
Do we not know?
Yes, lots of people did. They were particularly frightened of the sea people.
Sea people?
Yeah.
Now, would sea people would just be people from other countries coming in boats, right?
Yeah.
Not like
Sure.
people with scales.
Sure. But it could have been Vikings.
Right.
Or something
Sea
before the
people.
Vikings, the sea people. They were frightened of that. They were the Assyrians attacked them, and they attacked the Assyrians, and you know, it's an ongoing conflict. If you want to understand the conflict, it's to do with energy exchange. So if we go to war in Iraq, we went there for oil. In Libya, we went there for oil. That's a commodity that they had that we could take or continue the supply of to keep our civilization together. It's never been any different. It all started way back when we started planting, when we came out of hunter-gathering mode and we went into agricultural mode. And when we did that, we needed a plot of fixed land. And that plot of fixed land would feed us. But if somebody was starving and they were a bit stronger in their troop, they'd come along like a bunch of monkeys and take that plot of land off you. So what you did is you got your most aggressive young kids, the ones that could fight and liked fighting, and you made a very small little troop of an army, and you protected that plot of land. And so there you have countries, and there you have military. Prior to that, as hunter-gatherers, we travelled freely on the earth. We were able to harvest fish, animals, fur, hazelnuts, everything that was growing. But that ended when we had the big melt of the ice flows. It raised the sea levels 300 feet and wiped out 90% of the flora and fauna on the earth, and that's 12,500 years ago. That's why we started agriculture. And we are warriors because of agriculture.
It does give a big vote as to having a military, like it's a thumbs up for having a military.
Correct.
So if Egypt had had a good military, then they could have survived.
Sure.
So you got to have a balance between being peace-loving people, but really protecting yourself.
Sure.
And if, you know, I mean, I used to be married to somebody in the military, in the Canadian Air Force, and I remember a comment, you know, nobody's going to attack Switzerland because they have a great military. So yes, they're neutral, but you have to have a big effing military to be able to say, hey,
That's
guys,
right.
we're neutral.
Sure.
We're not going to side with anything here.
Yeah.
Get
I think
lost,
if you
know.
come to these days as well, the big argument about Britain keeping its Trident missile deterrent. So we've got submarines out there that could blow a whole country apart, travelling along at 3 miles an hour under the ocean surface. Nobody knows where they are.
Wow.
But would you want to use it? That's the big debate that's going on in British politics at the moment between the Labour leader and the Conservative leader.
Wow.
You know, would you use it? Well, the moment you said you wouldn't use it,
It's a pointless.
man, but you're open.
Right, that's right. You can be invaded by the Vikings.
Or whatever.
By the seamen can come and get you
Absolutely.
for your land to
Yeah.
grow berries on.
Yeah. Or take your oil.
Or take your oil, which we don't have any in this country, do we?
huge.
In England?
Biggest.
What?
Off the west coast of Scotland, huge oil fields. They discovered them 30 years
Wow.
ago.
Wow. See, I've been gone for a while.
Yeah,
I've
it's
missed the
not
whole
just
oil
It's
discovery.
not just the North Sea oil.
Well, is this why Scotland wants to separate?
Well, I think that was,
So they can
Possible.
start their own mini Dubai,
well, they could do.
but with really good beer.
Really good beer.
And it's legal to drink
Yeah,
it in Scotland.
and it has
too.
to do with deep sea drilling. So we've managed, it's mostly Scottish engineers that have perfected deep sea drilling off Brazil, Mexico.
Wow.
So we have huge oil fields off the west coast of Scotland, the west of Ireland, but it's deep sea. And so we could probably tackle that.
So you got to watch your back,
Sure.
you Scots,
Yeah.
and your oil.
But I'm having elocution lessons, so they think I'm English because I live in England.
Oh, I can tell. No, I can tell. You got that oil smell around
That's
you.
it, yeah.
The smell of money. I saw that Range Rover drive up.
You caught me.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, but why wouldn't you? I'm a product of God, you know. I was made. So why wouldn't you put a product of God in the best car you could have?
Right. God being the
You only
sun.
need one, though.
Let's go back to the facts here. Your
With
God,
oil.
Your God is the sun.
With oil. No, I'm not a solar. No. The sun's only one.
But you said sun. The sun makes
The sun
everything.
is hugely intelligent in our form. So you're sun material. So therefore you are the sun speaking, aren't you? As I am. Because your body and the sound you make and everything comes out of something that was made by solar energy.
Because you're eating products. Unless you're eating at McDonald's and then God knows what you're eating.
So what you are is a combination of a little package of instructions passed on from your mother's mother and your father's father, right back to the beginning of whatever you were, arrived here as a tiny cell, and then you start building yourself out of solar energy. But it would be ridiculous to think that God is the sun, because the sun is just one of millions of stars.
It's a highly respected, energetic force.
Let's hope it doesn't go out.
Yes, that's right. It is much revered, very highly acknowledged, energetic parcel in our environment.
And it's more than that, because even money is representative of the sun.
How so?
Well, the three basic forms of money that goes back to the Mesopotamians. And generally, they're made of three elements. One is gold, which represents the sun, is an untarnished thing. And then silver, which represents the moon. And then copper, which represents the earth, corruptible. So the copper's corruptible. The moon is a reflection of the sun, so it tarnishes. And gold is like the pure sun. So the idea that they used behind it was that the sun makes wheat in a field. So it would grow, you'd grow the wheat because it's solar energy. You can see this in a lot of Akhenaten, for instance. You see life coming down with the ankh in its hand from the sun and the wheat sheaves growing. So you then say the farmer, and this is civilization for you, needs a token so that he can swap his grain for a pair of shoes. So who says what the token's worth? This token of solar energy.
Yeah.
Well, the ruler says it. The measurer who says a bushel of wheat is worth one token of the sun.
I mean, how do you even elect a measurer? How does the first ruler even appear that he gets to say, all your field there, it's worth a couple of these?
It all started with shaman. So the shaman would be an interface between the creator God, the sun, and the earth, the mother, and tell the people how to survive by his visions or his ways of thinking.
I mean, I didn't even know that in our British soil, I've never even heard that there was shaman. I know in Native America.
Everywhere. Yeah.
But I can't imagine.
Yeah. Siberia is where the word came from the Siberian shaman.
I mean, I've heard for UK history more like the whole Merlin school of things.
That's a shaman.
So he's really a shaman.
Yeah, and he's got stars and moons on his coat and everything, and a little pointy hat because he measures the stars. That's where it comes from.
Was he a real guy? Do you think there was someone called Merlin? No.
Well, Merlin's an interesting word because it's Welsh, and this combination word. Okay, Mer is a sea, and Lin is a lake. So if you read your story of King Arthur and his 12 knights of the round table, that's the 12 signs of the zodiac, plus Orion, which is King Arthur, and Merlin is the sea, the lady of the lake, Lin. Okay, all of that is to remind humanity of what's real.
I mean,
after that, they had Robin Hood, 12 merry men. Before that, had Jesus Christ, 13th sign, the beginning and the end. 13th sign is Orion. Don't be confused by what these astrologers try to say, but there's a 13th sign. There's 12 signs. They represent the 25,920 years of precession of the equinoxes. Each sign is where the sun is in at the spring equinox for 2,160 years, and there's 12 of them. The big hand of the clock is Orion, which is the 13th sign sitting underneath the circle, if you like, the belt of the constellations. And he's called the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, because it's a wheel.
I mean, these stories, the Knights of the Round Table and stuff, do you think that they were written just in a casual kind of way, or was They're the message
That's
being
message.
delivered.
Yeah, because before we had writing, then we passed word on by mouth and by image. So the combination of the image and the mouth, the words, if you like, passed to the next generation how to survive. Before the written word, then, which is a symbol, I mean, a great example of that is S. Okay, S sounds like a snake, looks like a snake. But prior to that, they carved it into stone. So if you create the Great Pyramid of Giza, then it tells you how many moons or how many suns would encompass the Earth if they were sat side by side. Each is half a degree, 720. There's 720 faces on 2 of the pyramids. It's all in degrees, you see.
There's something crazy with the numbers as well.
Well, it's simple. It's simple. So the Great Pyramid, bless you, the Great Pyramid of Giza has got 8 faces. 8 faces of 180 degrees. Okay? And if you look at that, and if you add them all together, it's 1,440. So that's 1,440. That's how many minutes there are in a day. 24 hours times 60. 1,440. So before they wrote it down in the Bible, it was carved in stone. All of these things are in your face. How many minutes in the day? How long is the precession of the equinoxes? How many months? You've got to remember that in the Bible, a month there was 9 months in the year of 40 days. So it rained for 40 days and 40 nights a month. And that matches 360.
I mean, these numbers, I've watched
circle.
some phenomenal documentaries on numbers that this number, there's 369 that keep cropping up. And with all the numbers that you talk about, the degrees and the 1440 and the 2160, that they always add up to 9, or they're at the very minimum divisible by 3.
Yeah.
I mean, is there...
Oh, here, let me tell you something you really like. Genesis.
Excellent.
Okay, so they argue about the atheists, which is a religion. And to be honest, I think if they believed what they said, they would get so depressed they wouldn't bother talking. They talk about the world having existed for 6,000 years. This is the argument between the Christians and the atheists and the, if you like, the evolutionists. So the first thing we do is we go look in a college dictionary for the meaning of the word world. What it says in the college dictionary for the meaning of the word world is epoch of man, not planet. So how long has the epoch of man existed? This epoch, this civilization that we're in? Well, roughly 6,000 years. He says 2,160 years for every star sign, and we're at the end of the age of Pisces, still not in Aquarius, because the sun is still rising on the spring equinox in Pisces at the end. That's 200,160 years. Then we add to that the age of Aries, or Amen, which is what we say at the end of the Lord's Prayer, your kingdom come on earth, Amen, actually comes from Amun, which is the horn god Aries, 2,160 years. And the first one, Taurus. So Taurus, 2,160 years. Aries and Pisces, 6,000 years. So it's right. So let's go into Genesis. Well, that's really interesting. For the numbers of the beast. You'll love this. God made the earth in 6 days. So there's your first 6. And the morning and the evening were the 6th day. So how many hours in the morning?
6.
Yeah. And how many hours in the evening?
6.
Yeah, 3 6s. Right in everybody's face.
And again, you've got the 9. 3 6 is 18. 1 and 8 is 9.
Now do it from the beginning. Go 6 hours times 1 day. And then count them all up, multiply them and add them, and you'll get every single important number to time.
I mean, 3 6 9 again. I mean, it all, doesn't it? Just pretty much 7 and 2, 72, 1440,
Yeah.
2160.
Yeah,
they all add
you
up
got
to
it.
9.
Yeah. And do you know what the rate of the moon is? We talked about the precession of the equinoxes is 1 degree every 72 years. There's that 72, 720. These are real things.
Right.
So what you start looking at is the construction of the solar system as we know it It's totally mathematical, and our ancestors figured it out. And they figured it out better than our scientists, because they've really only just come up with precession of the equinoxes in the last 20 years. But we knew that, our ancestors, who we disrespect, because they say they worshipped. Worshipped? They didn't worship. You're not worshipping telling time, you're doing science. Okay? And the first lines in Genesis is science. And if you look at the Great Pyramids on the way that I've just told you, look at the degrees and work it out. Exactly the same numbers are in the 9 pyramids. There's 9. There's 3 of the, Menkaure, Khafre, and the big one. Oh, that's terrible. Going straight out of my head anyway. Well, there are 3 big pyramids, but there are also 3 little pyramids. Now, when you count them all together and multiply them, it gives you the exact length of one wobble of the the Earth, 25,920.
Why would they do this, though? Why would they?
So you'd remember.
So they encoded the digits of timekeeping into
time
construction.
fears the pyramids. And the reason is that you and I, we're children of our ancestors. But we only live 70 years and 10, roughly. If we live in much longer than that, our brains go anyway.
72 again.
See. Well spotted. So if you look at it that way and you say mankind can only survive as a species with knowledge. So what would you build the knowledge in so that you could see it? So that you would remember. If you believe in religion, that is, you're reborn. You come back here again and again and again. How would you remember? How would you learn in a whole lifetime? All the things that have been forgotten. You couldn't. So your ancestors built it for you. And they wrote it in the Bible and they built it in stone so you'd remember it. And they put a cross there so you would remember. The Celtic cross represents the 4 seasons of the year. It's the belt. It's the signs, the 12 signs. So it represents the 4 seasons, but it also represents the 4 times of the day, as in Genesis. The morning and the evening, the afternoon and the night. It's divided in 4. It's measuring time, as it is in the solar system in which we live.
Which even when you divide 360 by 4, there's the 9 again. 90 with the 9.
Yeah, and
the half of it is 180, 8 and 9. I just find it very freaky, this whole 9 business. I find it a freaky thing, this weird anomaly.
It's because the Earth spins in 24 hours, but it also orbits. It doesn't matter, as Einstein said, whether the sun orbits the Earth or the Earth orbits the sun. The motion's the same. So all that's doing is showing you the calendar. But what people find it very hard to get their heads around is there is no past. So how many people do you know bemoaning what their parents did to them when they were a kid and why they've got a miserable life because this person did it or that? There's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't exist. How do we know that? Well, science has its uses because science shows that energy is never lost. And that's the whole story behind Jesus on the cross. When you see Jesus on the cross, like you lost your mum, you lost your dad, you lost somebody you love, you visualize them back there when they died. But that's impossible because energy isn't lost. So you look at Jesus on the cross, it's an image of you can't die. It's impossible. You can't be lost. So are you conscious energy? That's what they knew. That's what the 10 Commandments are about. That's what the Gospel of Mark's about. The life of Jesus as 1 year in the zodiac.
And when, having been doing all sorts of research over the last 4 years since my very strange experience, you don't have to go far before you start digging up all kinds of conspiracy theory names like Freemasons, Knights Templar, all this sort of stuff. I mean, are they playing a role in this?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that then. So Knights Templar, remember we talked about the meaning of the word temple?
Yes,
Temple
time.
means place of keeping time. Okay, so the Knights Templar were timekeepers. Okay, so they were responsible for building the great cathedrals in which the images of time are put in there for you to see. It's in your face. We
In
talked
the
about
geometry, right?
Absolutely.
In the geometry.
In the geometry, but also the carvings, the images, the shape of the cross on the ground, which way it's orientated. Is it orientated to the spring equinox or to the winter solstice or the summer solstice? Look at it.
And why would that be significant?
Because
Which
it's
orientation?
to do with time. So at the moment, we've just passed the spring equinox. So the rising of the sun that gives you life. And the stars at night rose at exactly the same spot. As the year goes on, the sun will move north towards its rising point on the horizon at the summer solstice. At the same time, the stars will go all the way to where the sun rose in the winter solstice. And they cross. There you are, another cross. That's the image. The Knights Templar image, if you look at it, is a picture of the earth. So what you have is a cross that's splayed from the point out. And if you imagine it's the horizon of the earth, those are the rising points of the sun at the winter solstice and the summer solstice, making that cross shape. So that's the Knight Templar cross. That's what they wore on their chests. And they were warriors, and they gave it up to fight for keeping time, I guess.
And why would you have to fight to keep time?
Well, we spoke about that earlier, because it's all about who's going to steal what you've got.
And this, in this case, knowledge.
Yeah.
The knowledge of how you keep time.
Well, it's vital, isn't it? Because if you don't have any knowledge, each one of us sitting here, we're sitting with instruments and we're using mathematics, and that's all inherited. So that takes us to the tree of knowledge, if you like. Okay, so a motor car that I drove here in today is the fruit of a tree of knowledge going back to the invention of the wheel. Of many thousands of human beings that put all the things that they learned together to make a motor car. So we can't be isolated, can we? We're all part of each other, and we use what each one of us makes.
Knowledge grows.
Knowledge
and
grows.
Civilization grows with it.
Until the barbarians take over and you lose it.
So you got to have your warriors protecting your knowledge.
Protect your knowledge.
Right, so you can pass it on to your children
Sure.
and show them how
Sure.
to measure the time, to...
Hey, we are so scared at the moment that we've got seed banks in Norwegian ice floes
Wow.
or hillsides protecting the seeds of the earth.
Wow.
That's how our leaders are. They are scared that we human beings won't survive and our knowledge will be lost.
Wow. Seeds of food?
Sure.
Wow. Clearly, nobody has much confidence in us as a species
Why
right
would
now.
we?
I know. We're a disaster.
As Billy Connolly said, flying mince.
Yeah, we're a disaster.
Well, you could say that, but only bad news reaches people.
Yes, that is an excellent
You're going
point.
to see the sweetest things that are done by simple people
Yeah.
looking after each other out there, and then you go, that doesn't get reported.
No, that's right. We don't see the video of helping somebody cross the road.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
you're
there is a
absolutely right.
balance, and there's a balance between order and chaos. So that's an example was given in the Bible when Eve took the fruit from the serpent. So people don't understand that either. Like they don't understand Genesis. You know, like the world's only existed 6,000 years in its present form. True, the planet's lasted billions. So the conflict is there. So we talk about that. We talk about Draconis, the serpent. Okay, that's what gives us the nature of time. We understand the time because of the spinning constellation Draconis. There's your serpent. So the serpent gave Eve, the planet, Earth, if you like, fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So let's break it down. It's a tree of knowledge like the car. Okay? So what's the fruit? What is the fruit of this tree of knowledge?
The fact that you can move.
Yes,
And
it's
travel.
not an apple. You know, if we talk about the biblical one, it's not an apple.
Road
There's
trips is your
Well,
fruit.
there's a reason for the apple, okay? And this is, if anybody wants to find out, that's very interesting. Take an apple, cut it crosswise. If you cut it crosswise, you'll find a pentagram in the middle of it,
Right.
okay? And the pentagram is the speed of the moon. So 360 degrees divided by 5, which is a pentagram, is 72. It's got nothing to do with apples. It's got to do with time.
Oh, I was a little bit slow there.
Okay.
I'm like, yeah, where is he going with this? Okay, now
so
I'm with you.
The fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil is, let's change the name good and evil for order and chaos. Because that's what time is. Time doesn't exist. Only the moment exists. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. The future is only potential. The past is gone. It's about change. So is the change good or evil? Is the change order or chaos? Are you building something to last, or are you destroying something because you're full of bitterness about the past? That's the teaching.
So the apple is the knowledge of time. It's
yes.
Did you say the speed of the moon or the distance of the moon?
Well, it's 72. The moon is 1 degree every 72 years.
Okay.
Yeah? And 12 hours in a day is 720 minutes.
Wow.
It doesn't matter.
That's an interesting theory, that whole apple thing.
Yeah, have a look.
That's a good theory.
But you have to look at it, because if you go to Santiago de Compostela, which they talk about as the way and the path, the whole idea of the medieval pilgrimage, which people still do today, when you get there, in the cathedral, you'll find what you might think is Mary, with 12 diadems round her head, beautiful clothes, beautiful statue. Under her right foot is a serpent, and in the serpent's mouth is an apple. And under that, hidden by flowers, is an image of the moon.
Wow.
Okay?
Ooh, that's good.
So
That's a lot of evidence.
That's a lot of evidence. So when you look at that, that she's standing on the moon, okay? Remember, that's a crucial thing. That goes back to Thoth, the god of the moon and measurement and weight. It's the moon that allows us to navigate. It's the moon that gives us months. Fertility is caused by the moon. That's why it's called menstruation. It's all to do with the moon. The tides rise and fall with the moon. It's a reflection of the sun. Monarch, the king. That's
Monday.
The moon. Monday is the day of the moon. Yeah, it's really important because it was a timekeeping thing. So she's standing on the moon. And what does that say then? Well, the serpent controls time. Draconis spins your life away. Bad things happen, but you'll get reborn under Draconis anyway, so it's the god or goddess or idea of the revolution of birth and rebirth. So she's standing on the moon. What it's really saying is the church, Mother Church, controls time.
Well, I was just going to say to you, my first question is, if it's all delivered via such symbolism, i.e. the serpent is Draconis, which is a constellation in the sky. So it's not something you would make an immediate connection. You'd see a snake and think, oh, a snake. But no, that's a constellation in the sky. And then the apple represents this pentagram with the knowledge of the moon and the degrees and the number 72.
Yeah.
My question then is, well, who's Mary? Surely if it's all symbolic, Mary is symbolizing something.
Mother Earth.
So Mary is the planet.
Yeah. Of course. That's where we're born. That's where everything's born. Feeds us, sustains us. But not without the Father. And that's the Son.
And where's he in this configuration?
Well, it's...
in this statue. He's missing.
Yeah, he's missing.
Deadbeat dad, where is he?
Absolutely. He's not in that statue. Every halo behind a saint's head is an image of the sun.
Oh, right.
It means you have knowledge of the sun if it's just a halo. If you have a cross as well, it's knowledge of the seasons and of life.
You started with the Knights Templar. Where do the Freemasons come into this?
Freemasons carved the churches. So you couldn't possibly make a holy building, a building based on time and the mathematics of the solar system and of the universe, unless you understood it. So theirs is a trade, and it was often called a guild. So before patenting and so forth, it was a secret. So what they did was secrets. Now let's go back to Jesus, because Jesus was a carpenter and the son of a carpenter. And we know that he went to Heliopolis, which is the city of the sun in Egypt, when he escaped Herod. So what you're talking about is Masonic knowledge coming down from King David, from the building of the pyramids, this knowledge of humanity protected. And he went to Jerusalem and he saw them debasing the creation of the knowledge of which we rely on, and went in there and beat them with a whip. So they crucified him. The crucifixion is the Chi Rho cross. The Romans didn't use a cross like the cross, the Celtic cross, or the shape of the crosses that we know on churches. They used an X shape.
Oh, really?
With a post at the back of it. And the reason for that is you couldn't hold somebody on a cross of the type we see as a crucifix because they could pull the hands off it. But if you put the hands behind an X-shaped cross and nailed them from that side, they have no strength that way. And they sacrificed thousands of people that way. That was their way of doing it, and control. You want to see the beast on earth, look at those guys.
So you believe there was a man called Jesus, and this was the role he was playing?
Well, he would have been, if Jesus existed like that, then he would have been a descendant of David, and he would have been what we would know now as a Mason. That's not a Freemason or a speculative Mason, but somebody who worked in stone and wood and looked after a tradesman. Yeah, but the tradesman was more than that. So if you look at the great Masons that built the churches in France and England, Lincoln Cathedral, Chartres, all of those great things, those guys were masters. They could make anything out of stone, just like the people that built the pyramids. So they carried the knowledge of mathematics and science through thousands of years, not to be confused with speculative Masons. Now, those are people who join a club to find out what it's all about.
Oh, I haven't even heard the term speculative Masons.
Yeah, that's Masonry. Masonry is speculative Masons.
Oh.
That means they speculate on the creation and on the meaning of life. And they're a brotherhood. Many of them, probably nowadays, a bit like Round Table and Rotary Club, things like that, quite good places to trust your brothers to do business with.
I've done some comedy shows for Rotary Club things, and people actually seem tremendous. I mean, they just seemed really great people. You know?
I'm an ex-Rotarian.
Yeah, and they were doing good things as well. They had an ear
raising
out.
money and looking after folk.
Getting people who needed wheelchairs a wheelchair.
Giving.
You know?
It's about giving and brotherhood, fraternity, if you like. All of those clubs. And it's about if you vote people in, then you trust them.
Well, if this is what Freemasons do, if you say it's similar to the Rotary Club thing, why is there this sort of scary connotation to Freemasons? And
well, if you think about the knowledge I've just given you, I have a photograph inside Roslyn Chapel of a cross on a tripod. It's a Mason's mark. That's what they used. Now, can you imagine what would happen to them if the church knew? So they built holy buildings for us to keep us going, right under the noses of the people who were not quite so holy.
To hide information in.
Yeah, in your face.
Information about time.
Time, your existence, your future, the balance, survival, keeping it going for the next generation.
How has this not got out sooner? When it's in everybody's face.
Everything in its time comes out at the right time. If it isn't the right time, this won't happen, what I'm telling you. It won't go out to people.
Where did they even start, the Freemasons? Like, how did they come about?
I built the pyramids. These are the guys with copper chisels.
And why did they call themselves the Freemasons?
That's 18th century, I think, when it became a cult thing to do. That's when astrology came in and they're using the wrong charts because they're still Greek charts because they didn't know about precession. So you got all of that. And a lot of people were suffering, I guess, because millions of kids were dying. London was a terrible place to live, and there was disease, and, like millions of their little babies were being buried at the age of 1. And there was wars and so forth, and humanity needed something. I guess a kind of another renaissance, if you like. It was an opening up of spiritualism, You know, we know all about that, don't we? Those spiritual folks and the ones that inspired Hitler. Knowledge is dangerous in the wrong hands.
Was Hitler inspired by spiritual things?
Oh, yeah.
What about that? I haven't. This is new
The
information.
swastika is ancient, isn't it?
I thought he just took it. Well, I guess I never thought why he took it. I knew that it was from that the swastika was actually an ancient symbol that was good, but our perception of it now is horrible because it was used as a Nazi symbol. But I don't know why he took that symbol.
It's about the rotation of the Earth. So the swastika is about the rotation of the Earth. In fact, the German Freemasons symbol is the Earth with 4 dividers round it. So it's about the spin of the Earth and the sun. It's about time.
Everything seems to be about this Earth and this wobble, and
it's all about time. If you look down at your watch, then you'll be looking on the top of the Earth and our hands following the sun.
And what's the connection of the 3-3 with the Freemasons? Because they have 3-3 in their symbol, don't they? With a compass, navigational sort of charting tools.
You just asked it. You just answered it.
It's a compass thing. So yes. 33 degrees.
It's about measurement. And why have you got a degree at university?
To show that you've learned something.
There you go.
And so why 33?
Yeah. Half 3 6s. No, I'm kidding. But here's an interesting thing for you. The tilt of the Earth is 23.4 degrees.
Which adds up to 9 again.
Take it off 90. What'd you get?
What 23.4?
From
off
90.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
I'm the worst for math.
66.6.
Okay. Oh, okay.
3 6s. Now, what you've got to ask yourself the question, is this knowledge ready to go out?
Is this knowledge ready to go out? What do you guys think? Let me know at thegreyescape.com. And don't miss part 2 of these special episodes on hidden knowledge. That's going to be posted next week. If you are finding some kind of value in these shows, please go to iTunes and rate and review the show. It costs you nothing, and it could make me go giddy with excitement. I could make very excited sounds if I see that you have rated and reviewed the show. It will lift my heart. That's really all it takes to lift my heart. For some people, it's mountains, ocean vistas. For me, it's a rating and a review on iTunes. And don't forget, just for listening to this show, you can get an exclusive, insanely amazing deal of a free international money transfer up to £2,000 or the equivalent in your currency. Convert your currency at the very best rates that I could find, much better than even PayPal. To do this, go to transferwise.com/escape. I'll also post a link to that exclusive deal at thegreyescape.com, along with, as always, bonus images of Crichton's Celtic Cross, how you can learn more about his research, and of course, a link to get his book, The Golden Thread of Time. Have a great week, guys. Thank you for listening. I would feel so foolish without you. I very much look forward to being back soon with more hidden knowledge in our next episode. Take care, and I'll catch you next time on The Grey Escape.